Hey guys, Detective Squirtle here again, coming to you with my second video in the Cards of Crime series, a series where we do some Pokemon pack openings and talk about famous serial killers throughout history. So today we're going to be opening some Sun and Moon Lost Thunder and talk about Madame Delphine LaLaurie. So if you've watched American Horror Story Coven season, you know exactly who I'm talking about, but we won't get into any spoilers. So I also want to say there's a lot of Spanish and French names here that I'm definitely going to mispronounce, so I apologize for that. Alright, well, Madame Delphine was born on March 19th, 1787. She was a Pisces, but can anyone really say they're surprised? Her maiden name was Marie Delphine McCarthy. She was born in New Orleans in Spanish Louisiana, as this was around the time of the Spanish colonizational period. Her parents were Louise D. McCarty, and her mother was Marie Jean Le Rebelle. Both her parents were high socialites with strong connections to the town's European community. Her uncle Esteban was actually the governor of the Spanish province of Louisiana and Florida at the time of her birth. So, I think it's important to note before we get into things that when she was 4 years old in 1791, the Haitian Revolution began, and this was basically a revolution of self-liberated slaves against the French colonial rule in modern-day Haiti. This made a lot of slaveholders, and I'm sure Madame Delphine as well, very hesitant of any possible insurrection among her slaves, especially because one of her uncles had died from his own slaves, so she probably grew up with this animosity towards slaves. Just after turning 14, she married her first husband, Don Ramon de Lopez. He was a Spanish officer and second in command only to the Louisiana governor. He was a widow who lost his first wife after a harsh trip to the Americas from Spain, and from what I understand, he got in some trouble with Spanish authority and was being moved back and forth around different Spanish territories. And during one of these relocations, Madame Delphine actually became pregnant with her first baby. After some political communication and favors, they were able to get him appointed to a council position back in New Orleans. And on his way to meet Madame Delphine to get back to New Orleans, his vessel actually crashed off the shores of Havana and he died. Just a few days after that, she gave birth to her daughter, Marie Borgia Delphine Lopez, or as some of you might know her, Borquita. A couple of years later, in 1808, she married Jean Blanc, who was a political elite as well, being a banker, lawyer, and legislator. They had 4 children. Get ready for these names. Marie Louise Pauline, Louise Marie Laurie, Marie Louise Jean, and Jean-Pierre Pauline Blanc. Unfortunately, her husband died a few years later in 1816. So they were definitely both wealthy at the time. They had, from what I understand, a couple thousand acres of land, dozens and dozens of slaves. However, when he died, he actually had a lot of debt, and Madame Delphine was forced to auction off a lot of the property and slaves to try and continue with, some sort of lavish lifestyle. And that's what she did, and she actually was able to continue a pretty high-style way of living. Then, in June of 1825, Madame Delphine married her third husband, Leonard Louis Nicolas LaLaurie. This is where she gets her name from. He was a physician who was actually about 15 years her junior. While together, they purchased a home on 1140 Royal Street, and this is the famous LaLaurie haunted mansion, complete with slave quarters. And at this time, she was definitely higher up in the New Orleans social life, hosting parties all the time. Things seemed to be going well, but the marriage was actually breaking down, apparently, because in 1832, Madame Delphine filed a petition to separate from her husband, and the petition was recognized, but it appears they had still been seen several times together after that, and as we'll talk about, there was a house fire short after in which he was home at the time as well. So, who exactly did Madame Delphine kill? I mean, I'm doing a series on serial killers, right? Well, her slaves, really. The accounts of how she treated her slaves were mixed, and they were somewhere between absolutely brutal and completely insane. Funeral records between 1830 and 1834 indicated the death of 12 slaves at the LaLaurie mansion. Almost all of them were women and their children, and most of their causes of deaths were being listed as unknown. So the death of 12 slaves doesn't go unnoticed, even in 19th century Louisiana, and word of her mistreatment was widespread in the community. So much so that the city actually sent a lawyer to her house to remind her of the laws on the upkeep of slaves. The lawyer at this time apparently found no evidence of wrongdoing. I'm kind of skeptical about that, but that's what we're told. Things came crashing down for Madame Delphine, however, when, while supposedly whipping one of her young slaves between the ages of 8 and 12 for snagging her hair while brushing it, The slave actually fell backwards out a window, trying to escape the whipping, I'm sure, and she fell to her death from the second story. This was widespread, in front of the community, right in the heart of New Orleans at the time, and this led to an investigation, and Madame Delphine was actually found guilty of mistreating her slaves and had to forfeit nine of her slaves. However, through relatives and political favors, buying and reselling, it appears she was actually able to get them all back and working at her mansion not shortly after that. Then comes April 1834, and this is when a major fire broke out at the LaLaurie mansion, which later comes out actually the cook said she started the fire, the slave cook said she started the fire in a suicide attempt. Well, police and fire get there, and they want to go in the slave quarters to make sure everyone was evacuated. Madame Delphine refused to let them in, and the story goes a bunch of bystanders actually broke down the door. When they opened the doors, they were pretty shocked. They saw 7 slaves. They were horribly mutilated. They were being hanged by the neck, their limbs nearly torn apart. One of the bystanders, I kind of want to say luckily, was a judge, a high respected, esteemed position at the time, even still today. And he testified that when he went in there, he saw, and I'm quoting exactly here, a negress wearing an iron collar and an old Negro woman who had received a very deep wound on her head, too weak to be able to walk. Further stories circulating around that time say that some of the slaves had spiked collars on, so that their head position was always fixed up. They couldn't dip their head without being stabbed in the throat. And there was actually some stories that there were signs of flaying, which is a form of execution done by removing a person's skin. Just absolutely brutal testimony here. And when this became widely known, there was actually an attack by a local mob that demolished the entire house. And this was actually pretty shocking to me because, well, let me say this. So shortly after that, the slaves were taken to the local jail for public viewing. Because this is 19th century Louisiana. They're not the most racially friendly, but even they literally could not believe the stories they were told. So they had a public viewing of these slaves because, once again, 19th century people in New Orleans literally could not believe what they were being told about Madame Delphine. Some reports say there were about 4,000 visitors who witnessed the slaves and the atrocities that had been committed. And, well, that's pretty much the end of the story, guys. Unfortunately, Madame Delphine was actually able to escape to France before she could face persecution. There were some conflicting reports on whether or not she tried to come back. Obviously, her family told her not to come back. And also varying reports on the age of her death, but it seems that she lived to be about 60 to 64. So that's unfortunate how that story ends, but that's how it goes sometimes, guys. Well, thank you so much for sticking through my second video. If you liked it, once again, either for the pack opening or the story of Madame Delphine, please be sure to drop a like, leave a comment, and subscribe. Thank you so much.